What if I told you that one of football's most respected figures carried a secret for more than a decade? Not a transfer rumor, not a tactical cheat, a secret about love, a relationship hidden in plain sight, kept behind lockers, press conferences, family dinners, and trophies. This is the story of Sonia Bompastor and Camille Abily, two football legends, two mothers, one truth that stayed quiet for 13 years, until it could no longer be kept. They met where so many football stories begin. On the pitch, Sonia, razor-sharp down the left flank, a leader with a defensive heart and an attacking mind. Camille, the midfield artist, vision, finesse, the kind of player who could bend a game with a single pass. They were teammates. Teammates turned friends. Friends who shared the grind of training, the thrill of victory, the sting of defeat. They were locked in the same locker room. They laughed the same jokes. They dried each other's tears after hard nights. They became family. But feelings don't come with an instruction manual. Sonia would later say something simple and devastating. When she first felt attracted to a woman, she didn't understand what was happening. She grew up believing a couple meant a man and a woman. She lacked words. She lacked role models. She lacked the space to speak. So those first feelings were folded into silence. Silence can be heavy. It accumulates. It presses at the ribs. It changes how you breathe. And for Sonia and Camille, silence became a way of life. Slowly, almost invisibly, a private life formed alongside their public one. They loved. They planned. They had children. 4 of them. A home full of toys, bedtime stories, and the kind of ordinary chaos every parent knows. But outside the front door, the masks went back on. Imagine living like that. Public applause in stadiums, flashing bulbs in media rooms, trophies displayed on shelves, a life visible to millions. And yet, the most natural truth, who you love, remains private. The pressure to hide grew from a mixture of reasons. There were real fears, concerns about how a relationship would be received, worries that the story might eclipse their professional achievements, a sense that if they went public, people would reduce them to a label. The couple. Not the coach. Not the player. Not the professional with a career to protect. And there were the children. Sonia explained that part of the reason for the secrecy was to protect her kids. She wanted them to grow up with their family in peace. She wanted them to know their mother's story on her terms. What began as a private decision for safety and dignity later became, Sonia admitted, an unwieldy burden. She described it plainly. Having lied for 13 years, those were her words. It's a heavy secret to carry. That sentence, the admission of a lie, even a protective one, is the hinge of this story. It shows both the cost of hiding and the human impulse toward honesty. Because while silence protects, it also isolates. It eats at Sundays. It colors conversations. It hides photographs and edits answers until they're unrecognizable. People close to them knew. The inner circle knew. Friends, family, and teammates could see the tenderness, the routines, the soft looks across training pitches. But fans and the wider media did not. The world saw them as professionals. 2 brilliant football minds who happened to work together. And indeed, that was precisely what they were, professionals. Their partnership on the pitch and later on the bench was real and effective. It was built on shared respect, complementary skill, and deep footballing intelligence. The timeline here matters. For years they were teammates and later coaches in the French football world. Sonia's career as a player was decorated and distinguished. She became a coach. Camille transitioned into coaching too. By 2024, Sonia had been appointed head coach of Chelsea Women, a major step on the international stage. Camille stood beside her as assistant. The football world watched. Their chemistry was obvious. Their rapport undeniable. Yet no profile piece, no match report, no tactical analysis spoke of a private romance. What changed everything was not a secret scandal. It was not a betrayal. It was a book. An autobiography. A decision to write. A decision to leave a record. Sonia wrote not only to talk tactics or career highlights. She wrote to put her life on the page, so that her children could one day read it and understand their mother's journey. She wanted to leave a trace. Pour mes enfants, she said, so they would know who she was and how she had built her life. When the book was published early in 2025, the truth arrived with it. Headlines splashed across sports pages and social feeds. Sonia Bompastor revealed her 13-year relationship with Camille Abily. For a moment, the football world paused, not because the story was sensational, but because it was at once familiar and extraordinary. Familiar because it was a human story many of us have seen before. Love, fear, secrecy, and confession. Extraordinary because the two people at its center are giants in their sport. Leaders who had been shaping the game in public while quietly living their lives at home. Reactions varied as they always do. Some fans expressed surprise. Some celebrated. Many offered kindness. Others asked questions. Some critics raised eyebrows about the timing. But for Sonia and Camille, publicity was not the point. This was about truth and about relief. Speaking publicly was uncomfortable, Sonia acknowledged, but necessary. The decision was not only personal, it was generational. It was for their children. For anyone who might be struggling to reconcile who they love with who they are expected to be. The story also raises a wider question about visibility in sport. How many athletes still feel that they must compartmentalize their lives? How many coaches and players still weigh the cost of truthhood against potential backlash? Sonia and Camille's choice to speak, to put their relationship into an autobiography and to answer questions in interviews, is a kind of quiet activism. Not the loud, headline-grabbing activism of major campaigns, but the steady, personal example that changes norms over time. Let's be clear. Their professional credentials remain unshaken. Sonia's tactical acumen, leadership, and history remain a part of football's recent story. Camille's intelligence, her playing past, and her coaching skill are part of the same legacy. Their love neither negates nor defines those achievements. Instead, it adds a layer of humanity to them. It shows that the people making big decisions on the sidelines have private lives, complicated pasts, and vulnerable hearts. Which is perhaps the most important takeaway. Heroes are not mythic. They have doubts. They feel. They hide. They forgive themselves. And they choose to speak. For Sonia, the admission was both apology and liberation. She called the years of privacy, tries ans de mensonges. 13 years of lying. Yet confession is messy. It has consequences. It has benefits. It opens and it complicates. But in that tension, something like peace can be found. Which is perhaps the most important takeaway. Heroes are not mythic. They have doubts. They feel. They hide. They forgive themselves. And they choose to speak. For Sonia, the admission was both apology and liberation. She called the years of privacy, tries ans de mensonges. 13 years of lying. Yet confession is messy. It has consequences. It has benefits. It opens and it complicates. But in that tension, something like peace can be found. Think about the scenes that make up this story. The locker rooms where jokes mask secrecy. The quiet family dinners when the phone is switched off and the children are tucked in. The press conference when a reporter asks about tactics and the coach thinks about a family photograph on the mantle. The late-night writing, when a memoirist chooses which sentences to keep and which to bury. In those moments, the ordinary and the extraordinary meet. And remember the specific human lines. Sonia's reflection on growing up without answers. Camille's candid remark about not wanting to be just reduced to their couple. To be seen only as a label and not as full professionals. These are the kinds of quotes you can put on screen, the kind that carry weight because they come from lived experience. They remind the audience that representation is not only about visibility, it's about complexity. It's about permitting someone to be many things at once. A coach, a mother, a partner, a public figure, and a private person. There is also a conversation here about privacy and paternalism. Some will ask, why not always be out? Why live a secret life at all? The answer is never simple. For some, privacy is the best shield for their children. For others, it is about survival in a world that is not always kind to difference. Sonia and Camille's decision to keep their love private was not always about shame. Often it was about safety, about being able to raise a family without intrusive headlines. In sport, careers are fragile. Public images are fragile. People make different calculations. We should not rush to moralize. What should be celebrated, though, is the courage to tell the truth when the time comes. It takes bravery to put your life in print. It takes humility to say you regret the ways you protected yourself, while acknowledging why you did it. It takes responsibility to imagine how your own story will shape your children and other people who look up to you. The aftermath of the revelation is still unfolding, but already, a few threads are worth noticing. First, the cultural ripple. Every high-profile story of a same-sex couple who speaks has a tiny chance of changing another person's life. Representation gives language. Language gives courage. Courage steps out of shadows. Second, the professional angle. Chelsea continues to be one of the most competitive teams in women's football. Sonia's leadership and Camille's role as assistant will continue to be judged by results, as it should. Their personal life, now acknowledged, may change how the public sees them, but it will not change the fundamentals of coaching. Finally, the story invites empathy. Imagine the relief of not having to manufacture answers to intrusive questions. Imagine the calm of being able to bring your whole self to a press conference without flinching. Imagine the example this sets for a child who might read a mother's memoir and finally see themselves reflected in it. This is a story about football, sure, about trophies and tactics, but it's also a story about being human, about the small revolutions of private decisions, about the way ordinary people build families even when the world looks, about the weight of silence and the ease of truth. If you were to build a video around this, you'd open with the public image, match day, flashing cameras, the roar of the crowd, and then pull back to the domestic shot. A pair of small shoes by a front door, a family picture on a bedside table. You'd weave in voice clips of Sonia's lines about confusion and regret. You'd show Camille's smile and juxtapose it with her steadfast professionalism on the bench. You'd keep cuts fast when you discuss their careers, and slow when you touch on the family moments. You'd end with the book on a table, pages slightly flipped as if the next reader is about to begin. And then you close with a question. Not a provocation, but a prompt. What does it mean to lead honestly? What does it mean to protect your children? What does it mean to change hearts simply by telling the truth? Sonia Bompastor and Camille Abily's story is not a scandal. It is not a secret whispered out of malice. It is a complicated, human story that had to wait until the time felt right. It is about two people who loved, who hid, and who eventually found the breath to speak. It is about the small, powerful fact that the people you cheer for on match day are not statues. They are people who will sometimes hide and sometimes reveal. And in both cases they deserve our empathy. So when you next see that Chelsea lineup and you notice Sonia on the touchline with Camille beside her, remember, the most extraordinary victories are not always the ones counted on the scoreboard. Sometimes the bravest acts are the ones that happen away from the floodlights. Sometimes they are simply the act of saying your truth out loud. If this story moved you, if it opened something inside you, then you know it's quiet power. And if you liked this video, if you want more stories where football meets life, hit subscribe. Because the beautiful game is not only about goals, it's about the people who play it.